That one? Is that good?
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan and Council, through the chair. My name is Ann Tersick. As a former resident of Grimsby for almost 20 years, I have a vested interest in Grimsby. I currently own 2 properties and a business in Grimsby on the Lake, and have purchased 3 additional properties, which will also operate as a business on Winston Road sometime this year. I'm here today to represent the businesses in Grimsby on the Lake, including those in attendance here with me today. I have Tara from Urban Cravings, Jackie and Ramsey from Jackie O's Boutique, Lynn from Lang on the Water, Mona from Casa de Blanca, and Lovelish from Lakeview Market. Also several businesses that unfortunately were unable to attend today. As a group, our goal here today is to request, learn, and start the process into a Grimsby on the Lake BIA, meaning Business Improvement Area. We feel this may be necessary to promote positive growth, economic development, and the beautification of Grimsby on the Lake to bring both business and community together, to identify and address the concerns and needs that the current businesses have, to encourage new growth and a more vibrant economic environment in one of the highest influx in both population and potential growth areas in Grimsby, as well as address some concerns the Grimsby on the Lake businesses are seeing. Some of our concerns, with the top 2 being the most important, are lack of parking and signage. We also have lack of awareness of the businesses in the Grimsby on the Lake community, lack of beachfront promotion to the Grimsby residents, and a lack of express parking needed to facilitate quick grab and go from several of the businesses, such as grabbing a bag of milk from Lakeview Market, grabbing signed documents from a lawyer at GSL Law, or grabbing to pick up new house keys at the Augustine team, or running to grab takeout at Olive Board or Urban Cravings. More often than not, these people are having to park far away and having to walk for several minutes just to run in and grab and go. Some initiatives that the Grimsby on the Lake businesses have already worked on together are: we've participated successfully executed to be a part of the 2021 drive-through Christmas parade, was given just 2 weeks' notice. We noticed a need in an area of opportunity, and we had lights installed down the boulevard trees on Winston Road, as well as the light standers from Place Polonaise to Hunter on Winston Road. It was a great addition to the community, and the town lit the standards the following year after, and we really appreciated that. We arranged and organized a quarterly mail out from Beamsville to Stony Creek promoting all the Grimsby on the Lake businesses. We initiated a Shop Local, which included a mail out postcard as well as Shop Local t-shirts worn by the retail businesses. We have supported and participated in Grimsby's hometown hockey events and advertising. Many of us continually support, advertise, donate, or participate in community events, including Grimsby Skate, GAMRU, GBF, arena advertising, just to name a few. However, we feel without a BIA that Grimsby on the Lake has not been afforded ample opportunities and support from the town of Grimsby. We hope this will allow us to be a part of events like happening in the park or Grimsby's 100th anniversary, as unfortunately Grimsby on the Lake has been overlooked and many of us weren't aware of the events and therefore unable to participate. So speaking on behalf of myself and the aforementioned businesses, we look forward to continuing our efforts, passion, drive, hard work to making Grimsby on the Lake a successful, beautiful, and poignant area of the Niagara region. We have faith that the struggles we have endured the past 3 years with your help and support will not be indicative of our future hopes and dreams for this amazing, incredible, beautiful lakeside community that many of us now call home. That's it. Done? I can go? I can go? I can sit down.
Thank you, Ann. Need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Baradzi, second by Councillor Frank. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Frank. Resolved that the delegation from Ann Tursick be received. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, there was a notice of motion that was sent to the clerk today regarding this delegation, and it'll be coming forward at the next
Yes.
meeting.
So we'll read the notice of motion in section 8.2. resolutions.
Okay, I just wanted to let
Yeah.
the people, the delegation that's here, know that we've addressed it and that Councilor Bradley and I are bringing forward a motion that to investigate the BIA. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the agenda. Thanks, Your Worship.
Appreciate that, Councillor DeFlavio. Just because our other delegation's not here yet, we're going to move. Oh, they are here now? All right, okay. All right. Now we'd like to welcome Kate Graham and Jeff Fielding from Colliers. Good evening, Kate and Jeff. Hi, Kate.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm pleased to join you tonight to officially present the products of your work over the last couple of months as you establish strategic priorities for the term ahead. As you know, this has been several conversations, starting with right after the election in the orientation process, all the way through each month so far. And we now have what I hope is a very close to final, if not final, document. So maybe I'll ask, I don't know, can you see the presentation up beside me? I don't think that I have the ability to share screen. There is a short deck that just includes the images of the document. Maybe the clerk can.
Yeah, we're getting it up there for you, Kate.
Wonderful. Great. Great. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. All right, so this is just a reminder of the process that you have been through. As you know, we started with very big picture and then moved into establishing priorities and more concrete detail at the last time that we were together at the beginning of February. Next slide. The model that we've been working from the beginning, as you know, is one where we understand local governance to be a collective exercise involving three important groups: council, as representing the leaders and the embodiment of the vision that the community has expressed in their election, and then, of course, working with city administration on getting a sense of the major projects underway and ensuring that we have a strategy that ties those two groups together. So we've sort of colloquially spoken about this as being like a ball on either side of the tennis court, going back and forth. As you know, within each part of the process, we've had council conversations and then lots of opportunities for your senior administration to provide input as well. And so that's the product of what you're seeing tonight, is the result of that work back and forth over the last few months. We can go to the next slide. I always like to just include a reference to where we started, especially at the end, because I don't know about you, but I find it kind of amazing how quickly these things go from being, kind of messy, loose conversations, words on Post-it notes being grouped up on the wall into something that feels, I hope, much more like a polished, finished version that reflects your direction ahead. So this is the place that we started. And then if we can go to the next slide. And this is the place where we are concluding. So what you have before you and what has been in your package, and we're hoping that we can share more broadly from this point, is a document that reflects your priorities for the period of 2023 to 2026. I will point out a few little changes along the way. One of them being, we received great feedback from you that we had the wrong cover image in the first version. Always very helpful to know. So hoping that this stunning image that captures the escarpment and the water and your strategic location between, which was something that even in the first interviews with you as members of council, you identified as being important, is highlighted here. And then we can go through the next few fairly quickly. So it begins again with all of your not only lovely faces, but also contact information for residents to be able to be in touch with you so they can see their new council. And then a short statement about a new day in Grimsby. As you know from our discussions, that has been very much sort of the centerpiece of the conversation, is about an opportunity to really turn a page and focus on the future. And this work began with a commitment that council chose to make about how to work together and work with administration and the community. We can go to the next page. So the document begins, and again, as you know, this was a piece we didn't originally scope in, but you expressed was important, is getting some values and principles down on paper, again, about those terms of working together. So what we have captured here is the individual responsibility that members of council have identified, and then the collective accountability that you share for the decisions that you make. And then some principles about working together, things about building trust, appreciation, shared results, and so on. And then we can go to the next slide, the big picture. So the vision that you established as a group, I think working really well and collaboratively together, Grimsby, an innovative, vibrant community where people and the environment matter. And then we've oriented the conversation from that point around three big picture priorities, one that has to do with people, one about places, and one about prosperity. And we'll go through these one by one. So we can go to the next slide. So the first priority is about a high quality of life. Not surprising that would be at the top of your list. And specifically, you understood this to be supporting happy, healthy lives in a well-connected, inclusive community. And what you see, I won't be so tedious as to read every line to you, but what I hope you see on the page articulated is both, again, a reflection of the work that you did in the workshops, and then also lots of input from your senior team about what exactly you would like to do over the coming years. I will say that there's a fair bit of work that's been done on the administration side to really map this, including thinking about time horizons, specific projects, and alignment into the budget. You know, this document is high level. By necessity, it just captures those big picture aspirations. But I think your staff team have done an admirable job of making sure that this is integrated into other important work, including the budget. So this is number one. We'll go to the next slide, which captures the second two. So the second, not necessarily in importance, but in terms of sequencing, priority was about responsible and progressive growth. Described here as fostering vibrant neighborhoods while protecting and promoting, sorry, we have a typo there. We will change that. Oh dear, our natural environment. And then the third one is about collective prosperity, driving innovation and collaboration in our local economy to benefit everyone. And then the last slide, if we can go to the final image, is a commitment about the ongoing work to be done. And that includes, you know, this has been put together within your first 100 days in office, which is a laudable accomplishment on its own, but that in order for this document to breathe life, it needs to not only be integrated into other work that you're doing as a municipality, but also be monitored on a regular basis. And so this commits to reviewing progress and reporting on that periodically over the term. And then it closes off with just the usual how to get in touch with us. So with that, Your Worship, I will just close by saying thank you once again. It's been a real privilege to get to support you as a council and municipality through this. We are, as I said, hoping to have to move this through to completion, noting that if there are any kind of small tweaks, as I spotted one even as presenting here today, a document I've looked at 100 times. I hate when that happens. But if there's small things that need to change, we can certainly do that. But otherwise, we would consider this, should it receive support this evening, to be a finished document and ready to start doing the work of implementing it. And with that, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate, and thank Jeff as well. Certainly, this was an effort that was well done by all of council and staff. It was a real town of Grimsby approach, and we're really proud of the document, and we really thank you and Jeff for all your help in making this a document that we will be able to look back on and hopefully achieve everything in it over the next 4 years. So thank you very much. Have a good evening. Need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Charwa. Resolved that the delegation from Kate Graham and Jeff Fielding be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to the consent agenda. We have FIN 2310, notice of motion fire budget, and DCS 2305, 40 Mile Creek pedestrian bridge information report. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Charwa, you'd like to lift something?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The fire budget
All right.
and also Parks and Rec culture consent.
Is it the bridge item?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're lifting both of them. All right.
Yeah.
So there's no consent items, so. Yes, now we'll move to a report CAO 23-03. We'll get mover and seconder to get it on the floor, and if there's any questions, it's for the strategic priorities. Questions or comments? Councillor DeFlavio and Councillor DeVoli. All right, we have a mover and seconder. Any questions or comments? Councillor Bradzi?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to touch on, I think it's page 10 in the report, where it mentions ensuring parking supply meets parking demand, particularly in Grimsby on the Lake and in downtown Grimsby. I just want to hope that we all uphold that. And as well as, I noticed there was nothing to do with heritage protection and heritage services in the document. And myself, and I think many of us up here all campaigned on protecting heritage. Would like to see that added in if possible.
All right, thank you. Those comments have been noted. Any further comments? Seeing none, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that report CAO 23-03, 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities dated March 6, 2023 be received for approval. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to FIN 23-08, wastewater rate methodology. Good evening, Beth.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. So I'm here to speak to FIN 2308, the wastewater rate methodology report. So we started this journey back in fall of 2021, and there's been a significant amount of work that's happened behind the scenes to get us where we are today, including important engagement with our ratepayers. This is a good news story for the town of Grimsby. Moving forward, or moving towards a fee-for-service model incentivizes water conservation and is in alignment with best practice. And the water and wastewater financial review that will be presented tonight was also an important step to ensure that the budget and fees that we are charging and collecting sustain the program as we implement this change. Tonight, through this report, I'm looking for council approval of the change in the way we collect revenue in support of our wastewater program, with the implementation of a wastewater rate effective May 1st, 2023, and that the 10-year water and wastewater rate models and related financial impacts be received and referred to the 2023 budget process. I'm now going to turn it over to John Murphy from DFA Infrastructure International to present the 2023 water and wastewater rate analysis.
Thank you, Beth. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm John Murphy from DFA Infrastructure. I'm here to present the results of our analysis in regards to the water and wastewater rate review. I don't know if I can share my screen or if the presentation will be put up. Oh, hang on, we almost got that. Oh, there we are. Okay. So I guess we can go to the next screen. Okay, so I'll use mine here. So this, as Beth said, this process started in 2021, where the town commenced a review of how wastewater costs are recovered from users. Now, you're probably all aware the current practice of the town is to recover wastewater costs through a connection-based special area rate for sewer. Now, the town did endorse, starting in 2023, to use a hybrid model where there would be a levy based on water consumption and the SAR, or the special area rate. Now, we were retained to update the water and wastewater rates and charges, looking at the hybrid levy and fee model for wastewater cost recovery. Next slide. So the agenda today, we're going to look at our approach to the exercise and present the full cost of water and wastewater for the town, and then present the projected rates for discussion. Okay, next slide. So we looked at a 10-year period, 2023 to 2032, in regards to the calculation of rates and charges for both water and wastewater. The full cost over the forecast period was developed from information provided by the town. The operating expenditures, which include the operating and maintenance, the regional charges, which include the supply of water and the treatment of wastewater, repayment of long-term debt, and the contributions to the capital reserve for asset replacement were projected out to 2032. Next slide. Now, these operating expenditures were offset with non-rate revenues, and those are the various fees and charges that that are not funded or paid for by the users, such as the water meter sales, leachate treatment charges, and various miscellaneous fees and charges. Then we, deducting those miscellaneous revenues, we were able to calculate the net cost to be recovered from users for each year. Now, I should say the capital asset replacement requirements were based on the town's 2023 and 2032, 2023 to 2032 capital plan and the your recent 2022 asset management plans and annual funding recommendations. Next slide. Now, the growth-related capital was identified again from the city's capital forecast, as well as the 2022 development charges study. The net non-growth capital was financed from regional grants in regards to certain wastewater projects. There were external contributions for some projects, but the majority was provided from the operating and capital reserves. In regards to growth-related capital, those projects were financed from development charge reserve balances when available. We'll talk about some of the projects that are growth related, where long-term debt was required because there was insufficient projected reserve balances in the development charge reserve funds. Now, the debt servicing in relation to the growth related debt would be serviced by development charge receipts or future development charge receipts. So there'd be no impact on the rates and charges imposed on water and wastewater customers. Next slide. We looked at, obviously, customer and consumption growth was projected at 2032 based on the current customers' consumption patterns and growth projections contained in the recent development charge study. We didn't change anything in regards to the water rate structure, which consists of a single base charge and a uniform volumetric rate. Now, in regards to wastewater, the proposed wastewater rate structure is considered where, as Beth had mentioned, 50% of the wastewater cost would be recovered from the connection-based special area sewer tax levy, and with the balance 50% from a wastewater volumetric fee, which we will discuss later in the presentation. So in regards to the assessment of the costs for water and wastewater, again, we looked at the the costs, the projected costs in the following key areas: operating maintenance and the debt principal and interest, regional charges, and that's for water purchases and wastewater treatment. And we'll talk about how those are calculated by the region, and as well as the capital asset replacement contributions. And again, the non-rate revenues, which we discussed, are the miscellaneous fees, revenues generated from non-rate sources. Next slide. So I understand that you have a copy of the detailed capital projections. So this is a summary in regards to the capital expenditures, but a detailed itemization of the various sources of financing. As I noted earlier, the water capital forecast, it does align with the town's 10-year water capital budget, which will be presented later this month. And it should be noted that there is no gap in the between the sources of funding and the expenditures. So all projected capital expenditures are financed with sources as identified in this table. Now, again, the growth-related debt for water is identified in 2028. And as I noted earlier, the debt servicing related to that debt would be funded from the development charge, the Water Development Charge Reserve Fund. Next slide. So same as water, the capital forecast aligns with the town's proposed capital budget. And again, there's no gap in between funding of the wastewater capital expenditures. Now there is growth-related debt identified in 2030, and again, that would be funded from the Wastewater Development Charge Reserve Fund. Now there are some stormwater capital identified here in this wastewater capital forecast. That's because it's associated with wastewater projects, but any storm-related expenditures are funded from the Stormwater Reserve Fund. As such, there's no impact on wastewater rates. Next slide. So again, you have the detailed operating budget projections as an appendices to the staff report. Here, I've summarized the various categories of expenditures. We have three tables here. The first table provides a breakout based on the 2023 water cost of service. As you can see, the operating maintenance costs represent about 38% of the total expenditures, whereas the cost of regional water purchases amounts to 35%. The transfer to capital reserves represents approximately 28%, and then there's 1% in regards to non-rate operating revenues. So if we go to the next table in the middle, now that is the breakout based on the 2032 cost of service. And you can see regional water purchases increases from the 35% of total costs in 2023 to 42% of the total cost of service, water service in 2032. And that's because the regional charges are projected to increase 5% each year. And that's based on the region's budget in regards to the cost of water. But overall, looking at the 10-year average, and that's the final table to the right, when looking over a 10-year period, the town's operating maintenance costs represent about 35% of the overall cost of service, whereas the region's cost to purchase water represents 38%, and the transfer to the capital reserves to fund asset replacement represents 27%. Next slide. In regards to the wastewater operating cost of service, in 2023, the town's operating maintenance costs related to wastewater represents about a quarter of the total cost of service. The region's charges to treat wastewater from the town represents 54%, and the transfer to the capital reserve represents 23%. Now, when we go out to 2032, the region's charge for treatment of the town's wastewater represents almost 2/3, or actually a little over 2/3 of the overall cost. And that's because it's projected that the region's wastewater charges are going to increase approximately 10% each year. And I think that's to do with trying to address their backlog in asset replacement. So on average, over the 10-year period, the town's operating maintenance costs represent about 21% of the total cost of service. The region's treatment, or the region's charges towards treatment of the town's wastewater represents 61%, and the transfer to capital reserves represents about 20% of the total cost of service on average over the 10-year period. Next slide. Now we're looking at the reserves and reserve funds for water and wastewater. Each service has 3 reserve funds. The first is a capital replacement reserve fund, and that is used to fund the rehabilitation and renewal of all capital assets. And it's a town's policy to maintain that at a level to sustain asset replacement needs when considering other aspects such as contribution level and external funding. The Development Charge Reserve Fund really funds the growth-related capital for the town, as outlined in the Development Charges Study. The final is the Operating Stabilization Reserve, and that is used to ensure stable rates as well as provide operating emergencies, and to fund what they call operating projects, and those are non-TCA or non-capital asset related capital. Now, the town's policy is to maintain the operating reserve at 10 to 15% of operating expenditures. And in this analysis, we ensured that that was complied with, and the rates were set such that that reserve, the operating reserves, did maintain between a 10 and 15% of operating expenditures. Next slide. So obviously, the rate structures for water and now the proposed wastewater, the rate structure for wastewater does require that customer and volumes be projected. Obviously, there's other matters or other things or reasons why we project that, because obviously there's volume does impact on certain costs such as chemicals and hydro. And as I mentioned earlier, the rate structure does require a projection of future customers and the volumes generated by those customers. And we did provide that in the next slide. You'll see our projection of customers and consumption. So the information here was provided by the town in regards to the 2022 and 2023 customers. We did project those out based on the town's growth projections as provided from the development charge background study. In regards to the projection of volumes, they are calculated by multiplying the average consumption for a customer class, and that was based on the 2022 customer consumption, by the annual growth in those customer classes. Next slide. So here we're going to present the projected rates that result from this, our analysis. As noted earlier, the current water rate structure for the town consists of a fixed charge per customer plus a uniform consumption rate. The uniform volumetric consumption rate is a single block, which means it doesn't vary based on the level of consumption of a customer. Now, the current practice of the town is recover wastewater costs through the, as I noted earlier, the connection-based sewer levy special area rate. And as I noted earlier again, the town did endorse that starting in 2023, a hybrid levy model for the recovery of wastewater costs be used. Next slide. So I just wanted to put this slide up, which shows your current rates and charges for water and wastewater. As you can see, the town currently charges approximately $114 per customer per year, with a $1.48 per cubic meter of water consumption. And we have the various tax rates based on the tax class. and this is per $1,000 of assessed property value. And then there are charges here which the town imposes on new builds based on a per unit. It's $242. Plus, the town does sell water to the city of Hamilton and charges $2.79 per cubic meter. Next slide. So here are the projected water rates and charges. Now, again, the rate increases are required to ensure long-term financial sustainability of the water system and to ensure that your capital and operating reserves are maintained at appropriate levels. Now, it should be noted that the rate increases identified here also apply to the builder's flat fee as well as to the water sales to the city of Hamilton. Now, any surpluses or deficits that result from these rate increases are transferred either into the operating reserve or transferred from to ensure a balanced budget, as well as to ensure the operating reserve maintains the target levels as noted previously at 10% to 15% of the operating budget. Next slide. In regards to the wastewater rates and charges, so what's happened here is, and I think in Beth's report, it indicated that because the implementation of your rates won't occur to May 1st, the new rate structure, again, to ensure that all wastewater costs are collected in 2023, only 1/3 of the total cost would be recovered from the new volumetric wastewater rate, whereas 2/3 would be recovered from the connection-based special area rate. And that's because the tax levy, I guess the tax bill hasn't gone out, so they can recover 100% or the 66% of the total cost, whereas the volumetric rate, you can't go back in January, February, March, and April. That's going to commence in May. So this would only happen in 2023. In 2024 and onwards, you'll have the 50% of wastewater costs will be recovered from the special area rate, and 50% will be recovered from the volumetric wastewater rate. Next slide. So in regards to the customer impact for water, in 2022, looking at a residential customer that consumes 193 cubic meters, that's, I guess, the average residential customer consumption, their bill would have been $600, whereas in 2023, if these rates are approved, the typical residential customer would see a bill of $624 for a $24 increase, which represents 4%. Now, the next slide is a little more difficult because we have restated the 2022 charge. So in 2022, a typical residential customer with an assessed value of $442 would have paid about $570 for their wastewater bill. In 2023, with the new methodology, they would pay $553, which represents an actual reduction of 2.8%. Now, a typical residential customer, and that's a customer that has a residential property assessed at $422,000, for any customer that consumes less than 213 cubic meters per year, or 175 cubic meters from May 1st to December 31st, we'll see a reduction in their wastewater charge. Now, obviously, there's going to be winners and losers. You've got different customers with different property classes who consume different volumes of water. So you can't really list all the winners and losers right now. But if you look at the bottom table and the third column, which shows the 2022 restated charge, so that is applying the new methodology to 2022, a customer would see an increase in their wastewater bill of 4.3%. So at that, I will be open for questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I have a few questions. So if we were to compare Grimsby and the special area rate method that we use to other municipalities, how common is it to have a special area rate within municipalities? The subsequent question to that is, shouldn't our goal be to have almost no special area rate? And so I understand that for now, the proposal is a hybrid, but shouldn't the true cost of water be paid for by the people who are using the water, and therefore the goal to not be a hybrid, for it to be brought down to as close to zero as possible? I understand that there are other costs that were mentioned in the presentation, but is it possible to get close to zero and to make it accurately reflect that? And then I have a couple of other questions, Your Worship, if you don't mind.
John, I think I'll take this one if that's all right.
Right. Sure.
So we are actually the only municipality in Ontario that has a sewer area rate charge. It was decided that every municipality has some kind of mix of fixed and variable. Nobody's going to be 100% variable just because of the split of the risk, and you want to ensure that you're at least covering some portion of your cost based on a fixed charge. So it's definitely something that we will look to consider going forward as we progress on this journey. There is an opportunity for sure to look more closely at the mix between fixed and variable.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you again. So these rates that we have and the information that John's given us on those tables, as far as, the 2023 starting in May, and then subsequent rates and changes that occur, will these be adjusted based on what we learn? They're kind of fluid, and because they're based on projected usage, actual usage might be different. We learned that when water, for example, was metered for the first time, usage went down because people were actually, and that's the goal, right? The goal is conservation. One of the goals of any type of metering system is to get people to use less, to use it conservatively and not waste. So if that is the goal, then we're going to have to adjust, because if we're doing it based on amount that people are using and people use less, then we're going to have to charge more to provide the same service. So is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, through the mayor, you're absolutely correct. This is, so we are presenting this model. This is based on the information that we know today. We are asking that this model be referred and the financial impacts of this be referred to the budget. We will base our 2023 budget that you will see for approval based on the rates as recommended in this analysis, but we will certainly, as part of our engagement with DFA, we are going to receive the models internally and be able to revise them on a go-forward basis.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. The only other municipality that I know of that has a sort of special area rate in that same way that we have, I think that I'm familiar with anyway, is Hamilton. And I think they implemented in 2016 because and unlike ours are in good shape, but Hamilton's were in such rough shape that they had to put in a special kind of levy because they had so much groundwater and runoff going into their wastewater that they were treating everything the same. So we don't have that problem, so I want to make sure that our taxes accurately reflect that. The last thing I wanted to say was we are going to make sure that whatever we put on the water bill is going to come off the levy, right? I know that the answer to that's yes, but I do want that to be said in public, that the goal is to immediately remove that. And then, of course, taxes are sometimes go up as a result of the costs that the municipality has. But if this is something that we're raising in one place, then we have to remove it in another place and make the adjustments based on that.
just quickly through the mayor, taxpayers in the town will definitely see this because that sewer area rate charge is a separate line on their tax bill. So they will see the amount last year and then be reduced by the 2/3 this year. So it will be very transparent and clear to them.
Any further questions from council? Councilor Corstanzi.
Through you, Mayor. Just a question. So the regions raised their rates 8.59%, which is approximately $44 to $65 per household, they're estimating. Is that on top of what we're doing?
Through the mayor, no, the rates that we're proposing are inclusive of that change.
Councilor DeVolder.
Your Worship, I'm not sure who the question should be directed to, so I will just ask it and let either Beth or John reply. But my question has to do with inflation. So we have used certain assumptions in this analysis. Some of the assumptions are like a 2% increase or a 3% increase in capital asset replacement. And yet inflation is running, 6% and higher. Forecasts are hopefully that it's going to come down a bit, but we're still seeing projects going out to tender, coming back considerably more than even inflation. So my question to you is, did you run different scenarios with different inflation-adjusted numbers here or not? And, why did we land on these assumptions that we did? Because they make a huge difference to these forecasts.
Through the mayor, I'll start, and then I think I'll turn it over to John. So we definitely did run different scenarios. The hope is that inflation does settle and into 2024. To collect in advance of that, I think we chose, and John will speak to the rates that we landed on, but I think we found a happy ground between trying to address some of that inflation in the current year, and then knowing that we're going to revisit the model annually and consider those at that time to avoid maybe not making that decision today without knowing for sure that that's going to be the case next year. But that's, as Councillor DeFlavio noted, that things will be fluid with this model. Like what we're recommending for 2024 and beyond might change based on conditions at that time. John, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I read the Bank of Canada is projecting that the consumer price index or inflation is going to be around 3% by mid-2023. And I know the Bank of Canada's target is 2% over the long term. And we believe that they will actually get there probably by 2024. And this is a long-term, a 10-year projection. So we felt 2% was probably still reasonable over the forecast period. Capital, yes, in regards to capital inflation, it's always tends to be a little bit higher than the consumer price index. So we went with 3%, which is obviously higher than the 2%.
I will just, sort of conclude my comments by saying that, this is going to be very fluid. This is okay for this year, but we will definitely be looking at this every year, and I'm glad you did say that you will be looking at it every year, and that we will have, I assume, all the lovely Excel spreadsheets and so on, so that we can do our own internal revisitation to this. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor DeVolder. Resolved that report FIN 23-08 wastewater rate methodology dated March 6, 2023 be received for information and referred to the 2023 budget process, and that council approve the revised wastewater rate methodology being a hybrid levy and fee model starting in the 2023 budget with 50% funded from the tax levy and 50% funded or from user fees wastewater rate, and that the rate analysis presented by DFA Infrastructure International Incorporated be received for information purposes and referred to the 2023 budget process. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to FIN 23-09, 2023 consolidated fees and charges. Beth, that's you again.
Thank you, through the mayor. So FIN 2309 is our 2023 Consolidated Fees and Charges Report. Under the Municipal Act, municipal fees and charges must be approved by council and enacted within a bylaw. Annually, as part of the budget process, finance works with departments to review their fees and charges that we currently charge and collect and ensure that any financial implications are considered as part of the annual budget process. Just to note, per the Municipal Act, we are only allowed to collect for the cost to provide the service. Generally speaking, we increase fees by inflation, but given the current rate of inflation and considering the user's ability to pay, we did limit the increase to 3%. Overall, there were very minimal changes to the user fees this year, and the amount of revenue that we anticipate to collect from user fees will change minimally overall. And as noted in the report, the finance team, as part of our 2023 work plan, is going to do a fulsome review of our user fees to ensure that we're charging the right amount and to really dig into the volume and the rate in which that we're collecting to get a better idea of where some opportunities are or possibly maybe that we're charging too much. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you. Beth, questions? Councillor DeVoli.
I don't, Your Worship, a question to Beth, and so I know you said you're going to be doing a deep dive into it this year. By that, do you also mean that you may be comparing us to I'll call it our sister municipalities of like size to also see where we stand in the market then? Thank you.
Yes, through the mayor, absolutely.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I was just curious as to the fire, which I don't have the page number here, with the regional training centers. Sorry, I didn't print off the whole thing. I just printed that part. The facility rentals, do you have that spot there? Yes? Okay, so on that, there's, I noticed that there's a Niagara rate and there's a general rate. And so when I'm looking at the Niagara rate, it's basically half of the general rate. So we give half off our training facilities to, it says, applicable to fire services and other emergency services, including utilities within the Niagara region and Haldimand, and rates are based on a per-use basis. Now, my understanding is that this is used quite a bit. Oh, great. Chief Hudson's there, so he can actually help. So I'm just wondering why we have this reduction for Niagara region and all of Haldimand, and if there are any reciprocal relationships where they give us discounts, because I'm pretty sure we just spent a whole lot of money on a communication system through St. Catharines. I don't think we got a discount on that. I'm just wondering why we have this Niagara region Haldimand discount.
Chief Hudson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can say that the rates and rates and charges for the GRTC, we've really held them the same, pending a more comprehensive fees and charges review. We found that over the past 2 years during COVID, basically the GRTC was shut down, and we really need to, plan really an entire business case to look at our actual costs, our actual, what we're spending versus what we're taking in. And again, this is just a continuation of past practice, and why that was done in the past. I believe it was to recognize that there was some contribution through training officers and things from other municipalities coming and teaching and instructing at the GRTC. And so, we didn't charge for the time involved in those instructors, but we will be looking at this during the comprehensive fees and charges review to make sure we're charging the right amount.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you. So are we giving recommendations at this point, or is this like we're just okaying, signing off on this right now?
We're receiving it for information right now.
So does that mean I can make a suggestion on this at all? No?
Through the mayor, it is being received for information, and that the bylaw be approved. So I think we do want to give notice for these changes ahead of the budget being brought forward. So I think if you did want to recommend a change, I would be open to making that change.
I would like to delete the Niagara rate completely. So anybody outside of Grimsby would be charged the general rate. That's my suggestion.
Go ahead, Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. Beth, sorry. So with this, I'm asking for all the fire, anything that had a Niagara rate. So anything outside of Grimsby would get the general rate. Thank you, just to clarify that.
Through the mayor, I don't know if Chief Hudson, is there any implications to that with the shared service agreement, to your knowledge?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not really. It's being used so infrequently now. Again, we're just ramping up from COVID, so I don't think that would make a significant difference this year. So I actually don't have a problem with that.
All right, on our speakers list, we have Councillor Vardy next, and then Councillor DeVoley. So Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to lift the cemetery section from this so that work can be done on that, because we are, I'm told, quite out of sync with surrounding communities in terms of our pricing. I'm sorry, Beth, I couldn't hear you.
Through the mayor, if it's okay, I just was seeking some clarification. Are you looking to just not increase the cemetery fees this year?
No, what I'm looking to is to have us look at cemetery fees in surrounding communities, because I understand that ours are considerably higher. So I don't want to increase them, I actually want to decrease them so that they're in line with other communities.
Through the mayor, I guess the concern is that we're going to be releasing the budget to council on Wednesday. So I do have concerns about the timing to be able to alter those fees. Might I suggest that we just don't increase the cemetery fees in 2023, and then we do the fulsome review in 2023 and bring it back in 2024?
Okay, I can accept that.
Thanks, Your Worship. There was a study done, I think it was in 2015, by our Public Works staff that we could probably look back on. I was on the Public Works Committee back then, and the reason why they were raised was to match other municipalities. So I think they are in keeping with many of our surrounding municipalities, but I would recommend that we maintain this year's and maybe ask staff to give us, a table, a chart, and look at, I agree, if they're not in keeping with other municipalities, then we need to adjust them and try to make them equal. But for this year, let's go with the budget as planned, and then maybe we might have to cut them severely in the future if they don't match other municipalities. But there was a report done in 2015, I think it was, that we might want to look back on by our Public Works, our Director of Public Works at the time. So that might give us the information that we need already.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, they are considerably higher. I was speaking with a funeral director recently who's explained this to me, so.
So, Councillor Vardy, do you have a direction to leave them the same?
Yeah, I'm fine if they are not increased this year, but we need to come back with reduced fees as quickly as you can, and then we'll make adjustments with our reserves or whatever to cover that.
All right, Councillor DeVoley.
Two comments, one with respect to fire and now with respect to cemetery. I'll start first with fire, and so my concern is that we are in the shared fire services agreement. We are going to be having our first meeting this week and attending together with representatives from the town of Lincoln. And I realize we're considering rate changes here, but I'm thinking that whenever we do things as a fire department, we are doing them jointly between Grimsby and Lincoln. So I guess my question is to Chief Hudson, if we change these rates, would you say that in terms of the day-to-day implementation, that whenever there is something that is being held, that it includes Grimsby and Lincoln, because we would be putting on training courses and so on together, and so this change that is being proposed really would not impact our shared fire services arrangement and how we do things day-to-day in terms of training?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the present time, all revenue, any fees and charges collected by Grimsby for GRTC or anything of that nature strictly stays in Grimsby during the pilot project. If and when we ever progress to a more permanent solution, then I think the cost sharing and the expenses would be more evenly divvied out. And that's one of the subjects of the fire master plan and the financial review that's being undertaken as we speak. So I would say at the present time, if you were to adjust the rates, it wouldn't necessarily have an impact on the shared service. That said, Lincoln does have a piece of apparatus at the GRTC, have a pumper truck up there for use specifically for the GRTC. It's being used up there at no cost to the town of Grimsby, but there are operating expenses incurred by the town to maintain it there. So we would have to revisit whether or not we leave that truck there. And, there may be some arrangement we'd have to make to offset that. But as I said, the number of times, we're still getting ramped up in terms of the usage of the GRTC. The number of times we've actually used the training tower over the past little while, we're still not up to, pre-COVID usage yet. So at that point, I don't necessarily have a problem doing that. I don't think it's going to make a huge financial impact, but it just kind of, plugs into this whole bigger conversation about sharing of expenses and things like that is being currently looked at by the consultants.
Would it help if in the meantime, this rate were the Niagara rate basically was applicable to anyone except Grimsby and Lincoln as we're working? Would that simplify life for you if we worded it that way?
That would help, seeing as technically it is one fire department under the FPPA at this point in time. So, and I'm just looking at the wording in the notes here. So that would actually help out. That would clarify things considerably.
Because you do training sessions jointly, you make use of it, everything up there jointly, because right now we have a shared fire services. I think it would be, for the near future, until the evaluation is done, this may just be a way to be very clear that this is the applicable rate for anybody outside of our shared fire services, which basically is Grimsby and Lincoln.
That would be fair, yes, thanks.
Is the mover okay with that?
I would prefer. Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I would still prefer it the other way.
Oh, so you're not okay with it?
I'm not okay with it,
okay.
no.
So,
My second question.
Councillor DeVola.
My second comment has to do with the cemetery. And so I guess what we're hearing from both sides of the table tonight is that to some extent people think the rates may be comparable to other cemeteries, and yet we're hearing some that are saying no, it's not. And so the plan is that the finance staff will be doing that deep dive analysis, including comparing to other cemeteries, other municipalities, and so on. So I guess my question really is to Councillor Vardy, given that we've drafted the budget already, they've made assumptions on revenue and so on, would you temporarily be okay with leaving it this way and then waiting for the report to come from finance so that we can know absolutely for sure where we stand compared to others?
Okay. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be okay with that. I've had a long discussion with our local funeral director, having recently buried someone, about how our rates are quite disproportionate to other communities. So, I'm quite sure we're out of line, and I don't think that it's going to affect the budget so much. If we just hold it at the current rate. And I would hope that we would quite expeditiously review these rates so that they are in line with other communities.
Then related to that, could I ask our finance director, off the top of your head, and I realize you don't have it with you today, but what is our cemetery revenue? And by holding it holding the rates, realistically, yes. How much of a difference are we talking about here?
Through the mayor, it's about $6,700. I actually we can leave the rates as is, and I'm not going to adjust the budget for it.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship. Through you. So to clarify, the $6,700 is the difference between last year's and this year's. What is our actual operating deficit? Do you know that offhand for the cemeteries? Because in the past, it's been, close to $50,000 a year in deficit. And that's why the rate was progressively raised over the years, because we're not making, I understand there's a cost to running cemeteries, but the traditional model is money that was collected is put into a reserve and used to maintain. We ran a deficit for a long period of time. I don't know if that still exists or if we've caught up now. So if you can give us information about the actual cost versus the revenue for the cemetery, that might be impossible to do because there might be money that's been in reserves for 100 years in the cemeteries. I don't know how that works. But I'd like that information if you have it.
Through the mayor, I don't have that with me this evening, but at the March 20th Committee of the Whole meeting, we will be bringing forward our 2022 year-end results, and you will see the cemetery on there if that suffices.
So I think we have the resolution worded properly now. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report FIN 23-09, 2023 consolidated fees and charges dated March 6, 2023 be received for information, and that all Niagara rates indicated for Grimsby Fire Services be amended to the full general rate, and that cemetery rates remain the same and be reviewed for 2024, and that a bylaw authorizing 2023 consolidated fees and charges as set out in Appendix A, save and except for the Grimsby Fire Services Niagara regional rates be approved, including the repeal of bylaw 93-93 being a bylaw to establish a scale of cost pursuant to the Municipal Tax Sales Act 1990. All in favor? Sure. Councillor Frake has requested a recorded vote. All right, so we can do the recorded vote off of eScribe. All right, so that is carried. All right, now we move to report DCS 23-05, the 40 Mile Creek Pedestrian Bridge Information Report. Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, Sarah, for getting this together and presenting it. I know Councillor Kristangi and I in Ward 3, we hear about this bridge all the time. I would say of all of the emails I get, this is the question that I get the most is about when that bridge is going to be fixed. So I really appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully moving this along at budget time. But thank you for that, Sarah.
Thank you. And just through the mayor, I just want to thank Olivia, Spencer, and Marvin, who are also on the call in case there were questions, who've done just tremendous work to get this moving along. So wanted to acknowledge them. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And again, yes, it's been a long time coming, and we'll be happy to see it finally get rebuilt. Moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that report DCS 23-05 40 Mile Creek Pedestrian Bridge Design Information Report dated March 6, 2023 be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have a notice of motion.
Yes, we have. She's done a about her fire report. I said we haven't, but you're going to read that first. Because this one's going to take longer.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll do the notice of motion first, and then we'll go to the fire report. Notice of motion from Councillor DeFlavio. And it, whereas the town of Grimsby recognizes the importance of supporting local businesses in the area known as Grimsby on the Lake and promoting economic development in the community, and whereas a business improvement area, BIA, is a proven method for supporting local businesses, improving the economic viability of a community, and enhancing the physical appearance and attractiveness of commercial areas, and whereas the town of Grimsby has not established a BIA for the area of Grimsby on the Lake, therefore be it resolved that staff of the town of Grimsby is directed to investigate the feasibility of creating a business improvement area for the area of Grimsby on the Lake, including all businesses north of QE, east of the Winona border, and west of Kerman Avenue North. Be it further resolved that the investigation should include, but not be limited to, the boundaries of the proposed BIA, the potential benefits of a BIA for the businesses and the community, the costs and financial implications of establishing and maintaining a BIA, including any potential funding sources, the level of support from the businesses and property owners in the proposed BIA area, the potential services and programs that a BIA could offer to support local businesses and enhance the area's economic and physical viability. Be it further resolved that staff report back to council with their findings and recommendations as soon as possible. Be it further resolved that upon receipt of the staff report, council will consider the recommendations and decide whether or not to proceed with the establishment of a business improvement area in Grimsby on the Lake. All right, now we'll move to, what is that one? Fire. Now we'll move to report FIN 2310, Fire Services Budget. So the notice of motion that was just read now will be considered at the March 20th meeting. Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. So as all the councillors are aware, I've been doing a lot of research on this fire services. You've heard about this over and over and over again. My concern was always that with this pilot that we entered October 1st, 2021, it's a 2-year pilot, that we haven't had a whole lot of transparency on the Grimsby side. I had put in a motion before to find out who's contributing what with Grimsby and Lincoln, and that was declined at the very last minute. And now I have this. Unfortunately, this is the budget, and I actually wanted to get the expenses. However, you know, I think if you look at it, there's actually a lot more in here than that we could include that actually will inflate the numbers here even more to show that we're spending a lot of money. And from a cost perspective, this is not helping us at all. And I didn't even get into the services, whether they're you know, being improved at all. That's another issue. However, at this point in time, I'll just keep this brief, and I would hope that with the new joint fire services, that they would go ahead with the financial audit that we were promised in Q1 of 2022. We're a year past that now, and that financial audit was supposed to actually, this was included in the pilot, and this was supposed to be the point where they decide how each municipality contributes equitably. So I'm gonna, because I'm not part of that committee, I'm hoping that this will be something that the committee will address. And at this point in time as well, Lincoln is the main, has the main power as far as, delegating. Lincoln CAO, the Lincoln Fire Chief, and the last chair was also a Lincoln councillor. So I would hope that we shake things up a little bit and we have a little bit more representation on the Grimsby side. And if that just starts with including our CAO, Sarah Kim, jointly being, having the same responsibilities as the CAO of Lincoln, then that would be a good start. So thank you, and I'm hoping that we'll we'll get this sorted out.
Any further questions or comments? And we still do need a seconder for this motion. Seconder?
Just to receive.
It's just receiving it for information. Councillor Costa. Councillor DeVoli. Well, certainly with myself, Councillor DeVoli, and Councillor Bradsey being on the Joint Fire Service, we'll certainly get a report back to council this term. We never did get that, did we? All right, moved by Councillor Sharwa, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that report FIN 23-10 notice of motion fire service budget dated March 6, 2023 be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. So when does he live? Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of Monday, March 6th, 2023 to order. Can everyone rise for the playing of the national anthem? Come on. There we go. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the Town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, just before we get to the approval of the agenda, just on behalf of all of Grimsby Council, I would like to acknowledge that Wednesday, March 8th is International Women's Day. I need a mover and seconder for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the March 6, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to Resolution CW 2350, the Committee of the Whole minutes from February 21st, be lifted for separate consideration. That's moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the Resolution CW 2350 from the Committee of the Whole minutes of February 21st, 2023 be lifted for separate consideration. All in favor? That's carried. All right. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Whereas after the Committee of Adjustment meeting, the matter respecting application 29 Kemp Road East, Committee of Adjustment A4722, was appealed by the appellant to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which legally puts the matter into the realm of litigation where the town's legal counsel should represent our interests and direction. And whereas the town is now considered to be in an OLT appeal stage, therefore another open house with public delegations and or negotiations could put the town and council at potential risk. And whereas if carried, this motion would supersede Resolution CW 23-050 from the Committee of the Whole minutes of February 21st, 2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the town's legal counsel be directed to support the decision of the Committee Adjustment at the OLT. We'll have a recorded vote on this. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarification, so this is stating that council is financially supporting the legal costs of going to the OLT and so the subsequent other costs, a planner, anything else that would be required to support the decision of the Committee of Adjustment?
Yes. Since our Committee of Adjustment denied the application, our planning department approved it subsequently. We as council are taking the position that we're following the will of our Committee of Adjustment as it proceeds to OLT, and that will allow us to get legal counsel to hire a third-party planner to represent our Committee of Adjustment at the OLT as a will of council.
Thank you.
Councillor DeVoldy.
And so just to clarify it, by voting this way, we're not going to have an opportunity to speak to legal counsel before this.
No, given the time sensitivity and everything, and the fact that our Committee of Adjustment, who we duly appointed and who we have faith in, this is the proper way to proceed.
Do we know what the date is is there a case management study date set already? No? Yes?
Yes, there is. Yes, so seeing no further questions, you can vote on eScribe now. I've asked for a recorded vote.
She did.
All right, that was approved unanimously. All right, we need a mover and seconder for the remainder of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Fragg, second by Councillor Korsanji.
We'll catch it in the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Korsanji, resolved the amended Committee of the Whole minutes of February 21st, 2023, Council minutes of February 21st, 2023, and Special Council minutes of February 28th, 2023 be approved. All in favor? It's carried. All right, now we move to report BYL 23-03, amendment to the discharge of firearms and bows bylaw 20-62 to include short-form wording and set fines. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe, resolves that report BYL 23-02 amended to the discharge of firearms and bows bylaw number 2062 to include short-form wording and set fines dated March 6, 2023 be received, and that council approve the amendment as shown in Appendix A to include the short-form wording, set fines, and an expanded penalty section. All in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can. Councillor Vardy?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I thought we agreed on a fine of $4,000, and this is now reading $1,000.
That's the maximum that the allowed under the penalty section for the province of Ontario.
That's only for the second or subsequent convictions. I thought we were doing a minimum of $4,000 on the first conviction. That's what we discussed.
Henry, can you come up and clarify, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when looking at the Provincial Offences Act, we did find that it was a maximum penalty for Part 1 of $1,000 as confirmed by our legal. And so in keeping with that, we wanted to set the minimum standard there for the first offence as a minimum of $1,000 and up to $50,000 for that first offence. And then if in keeping and the offence does end up being a larger issue, or, for example, a business is involved, the judge may go up to that $50,000 mark.
Just so I understand, are you telling me that we cannot make a minimum of more than 1,000? Is that what you're saying here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for a Part 1, yes, the maximum is 1,000, and so just to keep...
No, minimum. The minimum?
Yes, yes. So,
okay,
sorry,
but
through you,
the minimum is 1,000, but can we not have a minimum of a higher number if we so choose? Because that's what we had discussed.
through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we could have a minimum of $4,000 for the first offense, but just in keeping just with uniformity of the Part 1 and Part 3 side, to keep that as a minimum of 1,000 just for a uniform purpose, and that's why this was brought to you as a draft at this time.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, $1,000 will be the cost of doing business for these people who come and bring people from all over Ontario onto the lake. They won't care if they get fined. They'll just increase what they're charging. I mean, unless it's a substantial fee for a first offense, we're going to be ignored. So I don't understand why when we said we wanted a minimum of at least 4,000, it comes back as 1,000. And I hear you, you want it to be in keeping with other things, but we as a council took a decision and it's not reflected here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in this process, the Part 1 Provincial Offences Act for bigger cases would not be used. So for example, if a business was to come in to do this sort of activity and their cost of business was more, that would take into consideration with the Justice of the Peace when sentencing that matter, because they could go up to $50,000 for that first offense. So we don't have to stay at that $1,000 mark. We would have the potential of going with a Part 3 charge, which would summons them to court at that time, and they could be charged up to $50,000. So that is just as a minimum, it would be $1,000 if they're found guilty, and a maximum of $50,000.
Personally, that's not acceptable to me when we agreed to a minimum of 4,000. So I don't know how my colleagues feel, but thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I seem to remember the same conversation we had at the last meeting. With a minimum of $1,000, I'm sure that any judge or JP is going to err on the light side of things. So if we start out with a higher number, I think that is going to be more detrimental to the infraction than having it at 1,000. I do remember we said 4,000. I think we should just scratch the first item there of 1,000 to 50,000 and just go with the 4,000 to 100,000. If that isn't an issue, then we should do that, because that's what we discussed, and that's what I thought we agreed at the last council. So anyways, that's my 2 cents worth. I'm sure some of our other colleagues will have something to say about that too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Henry, just a point of clarification. So part one, is this what, so maybe I can ask both Councillor Frake and Councillor Vardy, just so I'm clear on it. So part one would stay at 1,000 and part three would be 4,000 minimum up to 50,000? Are you both happy with that?
No.
So you want part one to be 4,000? So I don't think it can be, if you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the limitation with a part one is $1,000. So with a part three, we can go up to 100,000. So this is a gradual fine that we start off with, that where we could set that minimum to 4,000 to 100,000 for first or subsequent offenses. It's whatever council wishes at this time.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through your Mayor Jordan, thank you. So I agree. I was surprised when I saw this because I know we talked about $4,000. And every time you had answered, you said it has to be 1,000 when you're doing a part one. So my question is if we have to do this part one. So explain that, because I think that's where you're getting stuck on this 1,000. So is there always a part one and a part three, or what? Clarification on that, please.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So a part one charge doesn't always need to happen for a part three charge to happen. So a part three charge can happen before a part one charge. So a part three charge would for example, would me be, or the staff be summoning this individual to court where they could face that penalty, while a part one would just be a ticket on the spot. So that would be at the discretion of the officer at that time to either go with a part three or with a part one. So in more severe cases, we would elect to go with a part three because of that higher maximum penalty. So for example, in the case of these businesses comparative to an individual, that's where that discretion would be used.
So I guess my question here is if it's potential, if we took out the part one and just have the part three, the minimum of 4,000, maximum 100,000. Right? I don't know if I can word that properly, if somebody else wants to jump in and do it.
Councillor Corstanzi.
Through you, Mayor, perhaps maybe a minimum of 1,000, a maximum of 50,000 on the spot instead of upon first conviction. That way you're covering that and then your secondary. But I do think it needs to be clear, because if somebody were to look this up, they'd go, oh, that's no big deal, and still go on the lake. So the problem is the deterrent of it's not worth our while.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So maybe you're not getting the point across. Let me ask you the question. Is there provincial legislation that states we have to start with a $1,000 fine?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. We can start off with a part three right away.
So that answers that question. So we can go straight to, we can eliminate everything here and just go straight to the one fine of 400,000 to 100,000, period. That's it. We can do that?
That is correct.
We can do that here tonight?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We could do that.
Can I just pass that now? Again? Exactly.
All right, so let's put together a new resolution that says this. Yeah. Councillor Vardy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's up to the NRP because they're the ones we are giving the short form language to. So if we leave it as is, the NRP can say, hey, he's just hunting, everybody hunts. We'll give him the part one, $1,000 and, yeah, exactly. So this, so whether we leave part one in there and part three, if we have to have a part one, that's fine, but it should be $4,000 because that's what we agreed to. So, and because we're not going to be the ones giving the ticket, it's going to be the NRP. And we want to make sure that what the will of council is enforced, not the will of the NRP.
All right, we're just waiting for the reworded resolution to become complete. All right, so I'll just clarify, I'll just clarify what the resolution's saying right now is, yeah. So part one, the first offense will be $1,000. And then part three, then this is all in Appendix A. Part three will be minimum of 4,000 up to 100,000. So, and that's all in Appendix A, and that was done by legal and our CAO. So, moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake, resolved that report BYL 23-02, amendment to the discharge of firearms and bows bylaw 2062 to include short-form wording and set fines dated March 6, 2023 be received, and that council approve the amendment as shown in Appendix A to include short-form wording, set fines, and an expanded penalty section. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to PA 23-05, Draft Committee of Adjustment Bylaw in terms of reference. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that memorandum respecting PA 23-05 Draft Committee of Adjustment Bylaw in terms of reference be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we're up to our regional councillor update. Councillor Seaborn, I see you here. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. For some reason, I thought you were going to have a really late meeting tonight. Congratulations. I have a few handouts, if I could. One of the items you've already got was included with your package, but to do a few extra hours worth of work today, I put this together for everybody. Sorry, Bill, put this together. Everybody should get one of those. Thank you. I have to make a confession here because I've done so much work on taxes lately that I totally forgot Grimsby taxes were due Friday. So I guess I'm in for a fine because I just stuck it in the mailbox. And I'm sure all of you are working on taxes here at the municipal level, so you're probably up to your eyeballs in numbers right now. What I've sent out is 2 sheets of paper. One is the general levy, and it's explained in pie graphs. I love pictures. The second item is where the funding comes from. And if you're female and sitting on this committee, you got an invitation to a special item for the ladies on council. Okay. So what was included in your package is a brief outline of what you've probably read in lots of the newspapers. The region has come to the conclusion that, or the conclusion of the 2023 budget. It was a process that was a whole lot longer than I was expecting. I think we spent 8 weeks going over a whole lot of numbers bigger than I've ever seen before. At the end of the day, the budget for the levy increase is 7.58%. It represents the largest budget proposal from the region of Niagara since 1970. So why is it so big? Why is it so big this year? Part of it was the pandemic that we all lived through in 2020 and 2021. There was a lot of adjustments made at the regional level in order to accommodate some of the new items that were required for our public. This would have included, of course, the essential and the mandatory, excuse me, services. Still have this cold from last week, I apologize. On top of that, the region has decided to fund, in part, the Grimsby Hospital, as well as the new West Hospital. Of course, those budget numbers are not usually included in a regional budget. They are also making pretty hefty commitments to the 3 hospices in the Niagara region. So with the help of the region, you're going to see those hospitals and the hospices move forward. The impact of global inflation has hit all of us. Every one of us are paying more these days. More for gas, more for food, more for clothing, more for just about everything. It is, of course, going to be felt at the municipal level. It's going to be felt at the regional level. Increased labor costs. That's another big one, as well as fuel costs. The biggest one that hit us and will affect you as well is the change over to Bill 23. So Bill 23 is going to see about $13 million come out of the money that would have been used by the region for infrastructure. When I spoke with you last, I was telling you about lots of projects that have been approved. Those budgets have not been affected whatsoever. The money has already been allocated for it, but we needed to be careful about any new projects. Therefore, the only new project that the region has put forward this year is 2.5 ambulances. Now, that doesn't mean that the ambulance is cut in half. It just means that they'll run the 2.5 times for ambulance service with the staff as well to function with them. The loss of over $3.1 million is going to affect lots of different things. It would have upped your regional tax levy by another 4.4%. That would have made a really uncomfortable levy. So what they have decided to do is that particular loss this year will be completely covered out of reserves. So what are some of the things that Grimsby will benefit from? And again, I mentioned this before. So we have a $7 billion public asset for the region of Niagara. The infrastructure, the capital part of the budget is going to see 2.6% increase, and that's for your capital financing. And capital is anything you can touch. It's important to keep that your infrastructure up to date and in good maintenance, because you certainly don't want to have to replace $7 billion worth of your assets. As far as Grimsby is concerned, we will still see the Grimsby water treatment plant go through, as well as the Baker Road water treatment plant. Those are all going to be covered by DCs that we've had in the past, and your development charges go for anything that relates to growth. That will also cover Casablanca's road widening, as well as the rehab of Main Street. The first portion of Main Street being done is from the hospital area up to the high school, and that should start sometime in the next year. So what you have in front of you, given to you today, is a picture, and as I said, I love pictures that tell a good story. This is your gross expenses. This is where your money goes. This is a $1 billion budget. $1 billion is covered by your regional housing, your NPCA, your court services, your police services, community services, which is public health and community services, roads, of course, is your transportation and your public works, corporate services, corporate administration, general government, financing, governance, public health, as well as EMS, as well as your planning and development. That's $1 billion on this year's budget. So where does it come from? Now the number for the levy is wrong. You'll see on your particular handout as well. It says 451 million. Excuse me. It's actually 444. We did make some adjustments to the budget. It went from 9.4 down to 7.58. So you'll see the biggest amount does come from taxes, But other revenue and transfers from reserve, bylaw charges, indirect allocation, other taxes, as well as your federal and provincial taxes. So that makes up about 55% of what your budget's going to be. So that's the news I have for you today. Don't shoot the messenger. We worked hard. We tried to get it as down as low as we could without changing any of the capital projects that we had, and tried not to interfere with any of the services that everybody's come to know and love. So I'll take questions, and if I can't answer them, the mayor sat in on every one of those budget meetings with me.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I've always felt that we've never had our fair share of policing in terms of what we pay into the police budget. Can you tell us what you can do about that, or, are you able to advocate for that? I mean, they have to. I understand we've got 6 officers that look at a huge area of basically West Niagara. It's just not enough. We've had a lot of, cars stolen every week. There's no patrolling. Like, we need to get at least our fair share of what we put in for that.
And I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, if it works with the pleasure of council, I would like to invite our staff sergeant to come and speak with council about all of the various issues that the police are facing. They actually have a police force of 40 in Grimsby, and you can blame me for giving you the wrong number a while ago, and I do apologize for that. Currently, the budget for policing is about $197 million. Most of that, of course, is staffing charges. 40 new police officers were hired in 2021. And you're right, I think it is probably the second biggest concern that I hear from residents all the time. And I would really love to have an open conversation and invite one of the members of the police force here to speak to you about some of the issues and hear your concerns firsthand.
Maybe we should get the chief of police here, because seeing as they'd be the one that would actually be doing the distribution. The only thing our staff sergeant can do is say, "Oh, woe is me, I don't have enough staff to do the job that I'm supposed to do."
I can certainly ask him, and I'll bet he'll come. He's very open to meeting with councils.
Councillor Sharwal.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. Yes, I would agree. I would like to see, I already had my hand up. I would like to see the chief as well, because I know with a lot of these things, we can't actually cut a lot of these services, but I'm hoping that this council can at least put some recommendations in how we can make our dollars actually go somewhere. So I know for policing, the same thing. I think if we can let them know that there's certain hours that we need policing to, between 3 and 4:30 in the morning, that seems to be where everybody's cars are getting stolen. So that would be just one example. I just wanted to highlight a few things that I noticed in your report here. So you had said that municipal property taxes fund about 45% of all programs and services in Niagara region. Our finance director actually said it was closer to 53%. So that's, and I looked at your numbers. You had written here that the average assessment for Niagara Homes is $700,000. So I went to the Niagara Region website, plugged all that in, and I realized you didn't put the waste management part in there, right?
All right, so the first part of your question was with regards to, I'm going to hit the assessment first. So the assessment they gave us was for a property of $280,000. That's the assessed value. There is no home in Niagara at $280,000. So to come up with that number and tell you it was a difference of $152 is a little deceiving. Now, I didn't have at the time the opportunity to figure out what the assessment of $700,000 was going to be, but it's a little more than $152,000. neither did I touch the wastewater, water, or the garbage. Those get added over and above. I think everyone here is aware that it's a secondary bill, and it's charged to the people that get the service. So if you live on the escarpment where you don't have water, wastewater, then you're not getting that part. And of course, you do have garbage, so you'll get that as well. The other thing that's going to change, and I would like to topic this the next time I see you, because I want to investigate it a bit more, is transit. Because transit this year is going to be a special charge for every community based on service. So Grimsby will pay less than, say, Pelham, which will pay less than, say, St. Catharines. So it'll depend on the type of service they got. As you know, in Grimsby, we've only got the on-demand service. So our fee for transit is going to be much less than, say, St. Catharines. And because I don't have all the figures and all of the notes from the various individuals that I'm speaking to, I'd like to tackle that next time I see you, if that's okay.
I'm still going though. But for the transit, yeah, I would actually, just to piggyback off Councillor Vardy's comment, I would love to have Matt Robinson here if he could come. He's with NRT, and if we could maybe just give him some suggestions on how we can actually get some money for this huge investment that we've made, because right now we don't really get a whole lot of money. A lot of service from our NRT, so if we're going to pay for that, it would be nice if we could actually come up as a council with some recommendations on how we can actually be effective with those hours that were allocated. But I'll leave that one alone. I was a little disappointed. I actually watched a lot of the last two budget meetings, and one of the mayors actually gave a whole bunch of the percentages of other regions and their tax increase, and Niagara region is quite a bit higher than all the others. So it's unfortunate, and I'm hoping you're just going to keep advocating for Grimsby. You know, we don't need to be subsidizing everybody, right? We've done that for a very long time. So, yeah. And then lastly, I just wanted to point out something here that you had written about how the region has part of this increase is because of the funding of the hospitals and 3 regional hospices. So for those of the councillors that don't know, the region has invested, it's 1.1 million, I believe, for McNally, and another 4 million for Niagara Hospice, which is 15 minutes away on Ontario Street in St. Catharines. They have 10 beds there. And then they're also building another 10-bed hospice in Welland and another 10-bed hospice in Fort Erie. So that's another $4 million. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that because they might not know. So thank you. I appreciate their report.
Thank you, but I did realize that I had didn't answer your first question, and you're right, but I'm right as well. So when you're talking about the $444 million that is paid through taxes, this is at the regional level. So your municipal taxes, 53% of what you collect goes towards that 444 million, okay? And as for the hospices, the full amount was actually 5 million, and it's for 3 of them. So it's 3 of them that they're updating. They may be building a 4th one, but these, remember, are private companies where the region really doesn't have the responsibility, the same as the hospitals. They didn't have the responsibility to add to it. But the work of the previous council was amazing when it came to funding some of these projects, because it certainly made it easier on West Niagara to come up with their share by the region, putting in such a big chunk.
Yes, I think when with the budget, it was $3 million for the other, or sorry, $4 million for those 3 hospices, and then the 1.1 was for McNally. And now another thing too, which people will have to realize, is that with those hospices, it was supposed to be funded over 4 years. Now they've stretched it to 6, so we'll be paying for a while. So is that something that they've done with a lot of the other parts of the budget as well? Maybe Mayor Jordan might know as well.
Yeah,
have they stretched
I can
it?
jump in if you want. Yeah, why they extended them over, it was due to construction delays due to COVID. The actual finishing dates are now aligning with the budget. So they're spreading it over a longer time because that's in line with when they're actually being built. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Thanks, Councillor Seaborn, for the information. It's always good to have data to look at. I would encourage people to go to the regional tax breakdown website. Put in, if you want to know the amount, to get a perfect amount, I've messed around with it lots of times. If you put the Grimsby property value in of $821,164, it gives you $10,000 in taxes, so you can see what the percentage breakdown is. So while your chart shows that it looks like 38 or 39% of the budget goes to community services, what actually comes from the taxpayers is closer to 6 or 7%, because it all comes from taxpayers, don't get me wrong, but from our property taxes is between 6 and 7%, because it's funding that comes from different levels of government that pays for a lot of those community services. What people don't realize is that 22% almost of the taxes that we pay in Grimsby go towards Niagara Regional Police. So when people are asking questions like, Councillor Corstangi was talking earlier, and other people talked about the level of service for Niagara Regional Police, I'd encourage everybody to think about how much they pay in taxes and divide that by 5. And a little bit more than that is how much you pay just for regional police within the Niagara region. Do you feel like you're getting that level of service in Grimsby? I mean, that's up to you to decide, but I think that that's a good place for a place of understanding. So what I would ask that you and the mayor do on our behalf is, we've often been critical of the level of service that we get in Grimsby, of everything. And it's really without basis, because we're kind of generalizing. Like, we don't know exactly how much money is spent in Grimsby and how much money is spent in other areas of the region, and what percentage based on what we pay in taxes. We assume, and I think we're assuming correctly, that we pay a great deal more, because, all of the services, to put it into context for you, all of the services provided by the town of Grimsby, parks, roads, sewers, water, make up about 30, I don't know, it's between like 35 and 40% of our taxes. Whereas just the Niagara Regional Police is 22%. So to put things in context, to show you how all of the services in Grimsby, and when I first started on council, it was closer to even. So what I'd like to see done is, I'd like to see, and it's not 1955 anymore, we should be able to break down how much money is actually coming to Grimsby from the regional budget. How much money is actually being spent in Grimsby from the regional budget. And I know that fluctuates from year to year, and that there are major projects like Casablanca that's being done this year, but there's been nothing done for the last 15 years. So, there haven't been a lot of improvements. So I think we could easily see how much money is being spent in the town of Grimsby. I know that there are places where it's more difficult to do, because there are things like wastewater management, for example, that a wastewater plant would service a whole geographic area, like all of West Niagara. But even then, I would love to know how much of our tax dollars to the region are actually being spent in Grimsby. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask. I don't know if it's something that can be done, but that would be something that I would like to see. I'd like to know, once and for all, how much is being spent in Grimsby? Is it a fair amount? Are we paying way more? Are we subsidizing Welland, which I feel like we are? Are we subsidizing these other municipalities? I think traditionally what we've seen is that Niagara-on-the-Lake and Grimsby have overpaid compared to other municipalities. But that's what we've been told. Do we know for sure that that's a fact, right? So I'd like to see a budget review that actually talks about what kind of bang for buck we're getting. And I don't know how we can do that, but if there is a way of doing that, I'd love to see that. And going back to what Councillor Charwa said earlier, when it comes to the NRT question, I think that somebody from the NRT needs to, I think it was $1.7 million was in our budget or not in our budget, but budgeted from Grimsby taxes for the NRT. Somebody should come and, I don't want to put people on the grill, but I do think that people deserve answers to questions. So, for example, questions about service levels and calls being dropped at the last minute for NRT. If NRT is something that people want to rely on, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but I would like you to pass this on. If NRT is something that people can rely on for work, for example, I have to get to work every morning at 8 o'clock, and I've called the day before, just like I'm supposed to, and I'm expecting somebody to pick me up at 7:50, and I'll be at work by 8:15, well in advance. If they cancel at 7:55 or 7:45, and I have no way to get to work, I'm going to be unemployed very quickly. So, if we are providing a service, it has to be a service that's reliable. And we need somebody to come here and stand before us and explain why it's unreliable, how that money is being spent, how the $1.7 million breaks down, and explain, because I feel like that's a lot of money. Again, I'm not an expert, maybe they can explain it to me, but I feel like I could run a bus service for $1.7 million that would be a heck of a lot more efficient, with a brand new bus. So, if you can encourage somebody, people talked about some member of the police services coming to answer questions, somebody from the NRT to come to answer questions, I think that would be something that everybody would have many questions prepared for a visitor like that. So we'd love to see it. I appreciate everything that you do and that the mayor does on our behalf at the region. I know that you're early on in your tenure there and you're going to continue to fight for us, but these are the kinds of questions that all of us have, I think, that we'll continue to have, and we're going to keep bugging you about, so you might as well pass that on to somebody else so we don't have to keep bothering you about it. But thanks again, Michelle.
Actually, I would appreciate if you kept bugging me about it, because I have a list this long of complaints or concerns about the NRT. So that's my meeting tomorrow afternoon. So I'll have answers for you. And if I can get somebody out for it, I'm more than happy to invite people out here. I'll just make arrangements through the town clerk and the mayor and make sure you're okay to have a delegation come through. It's the best way to get your answers.
Councillor Korstanji.
Through you, Mayor. Okay, so sticking on topic with the NRT. So, because you have a meeting tomorrow, it's perfect timing. So I'm going to touch on a few things. So first of all, judging by the tax increase, of a $200,000 home, we're looking at a $123 increase for people's regional taxes. On top of that, the transit levy average per household is going to be $124 for Grimsby. So that already is almost a $250 increase off the household budget, which is phenomenal. So as a resident who cares, I have a lot of issues with the NRT and its accessibility. This is not new. I've delegated on it before. When they initially were going to do amalgamation, I asked for the accessibility report as it pertained to intellectual disabilities, and Grimsby, specifically because of our service is different from St. Catherine's service. They have complete accessibility with buses and stuff like that. NRT is a different service. It is not fully accessible for people with disabilities. I've been told a million times, then use Niagara Specialized Transit. Niagara Specialized Transit does not, it only goes from one municipality to another municipality. You cannot go, I cannot go, from Kerman Avenue down to Dorchester. It will not do that. It's only from one municipality to another municipality, which means, this is what it says on the website, which means we do not have accessible transit, which means, I think it's something like 12% of our demographic is intellectually disabled. We have a huge human rights violation, ongoing and currently, and this needs to be addressed immediately. So I would love you to take that. The other thing we have is differential treatment in fares. So you're giving preference, not you, but there is, 12 and under is free, fantastic. There's employees are free, this is great. I love stuff like that. Anybody who holds a CNIB card gets free fare, which I think is fantastic. However, we can't give preference between disabilities. So you're going to have to justify why one disability gets free fares and another disability doesn't. Again, another human rights violation. So these are things that I would like to see addressed immediately, especially since we're going to be paying a substantial amount for a $2 million service, and we could easily get sued and have to pay more. So if you could bring that to the table, I would really appreciate it. And just to touch on your reports, thank you very much for this. I love getting it early that I can actually look for it. It's very detailed. This is very handy. So I really appreciate the work that goes into that. So thank you for that.
I apologize for not having the graphs ready, but I wanted to have both sides, the income in as well as the outgo. So that came this weekend.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Seaborn, for your report. Now we're moving to first reading of the bylaws. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 23-19 to 23-21 inclusive, and that same be read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Barty. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Barty. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 23-19 to 23-21 inclusive, read a first time, be now read a second and third time, and finally pass, the mayor and the town clerk to sign and seal the same and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? It's carried. All right, now we move to announcements. Any councillors have announcements? Seeing none, next council meeting is scheduled on March 20th, 2023, immediately following Committee of the Whole. We will be back after a closed session. Need a mover and seconder to go into closed. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that council meet in closed session under section 2392(1) of the I of the Municipal Act, where closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered pertains to a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which if disclosed could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. All in favor to go into close? It's carried. right, welcome back. Need a mover and seconder to receive the information from closed. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Sharwa. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Sharwa. Resolved that the information provided in closed session be received. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and second for the service level agreement. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor DeVoli. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that report DPW 23-07 service level agreement Bell Canada dated March 6, 2023 be received and that council direct the mayor and clerk to execute the enclosed agreement on behalf of the town. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for first reading of the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-22 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Mover and seconder for second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Baradzi. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Baradzi. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-22 read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk to sign and seal the same and rule councils of the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? It's carried. We need the confirming bylaw.
Printing it now.
Just need a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor DeVoli. Resolved that the bylaw confirm and ratify matters dealt with council be read a first, second, and third time. Meeting is adjourned. Or, sorry, all in favor. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.